So we're not going to cover that much text tonight, and I'm going to be teaching from some of the sichos of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. As you know, next week is his Yortzeit, 20 years. Somebody's here. Not for us, for us. You're gonna open, huh? Oh. Okay. Ah, shalom, shalom. Come have a seat. Take a chumash. What do you want? English, Hebrew, French, Hungarian? But there's plenty of chumash in here. Okay. Okay, you want another one? Okay. Take whatever one you want. Okay, Vaydaber Hashem. Vaydaber Hashem and Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moshe saying, Zot chukat haTorah. This is the chok of the Torah. This is the chok. Right? Like Zot. It's not just that this is, we know the term mishpatim, we know the term chukim, we understand, we know those terms. But here the Torah is saying, Zot chukat haTorah. This is the chok of the Torah. In other words, this one is being singled out more than any other chok. Now, what exactly is the definition of a chok? So generally we say that it's something that is beyond reason. In other words, mishpatim are laws that if they wouldn't have been written in the Torah, human society would come up with such laws anyway. Don't steal, don't commit murder, But chokim, you wouldn't come up with a law saying that you're not allowed to wear a garment made of wool and linen. You wouldn't come up with a law saying that Torah Duma and so on. Okay, you wouldn't come up with a lot of these laws, and so they're sort of like beyond human reason, and it doesn't mean that there is no reason. Presumably there is reason, but the reason wasn't revealed. Okay. In other words, Hashem wants us to do these laws strictly because God told us to do them. Now the truth is also that even when it comes to mishpatim, laws which we do understand, the real reason for following them is not because I understand them, but because God told me to do it. And so then what's the point of understanding them? Because part of the doing of those mitzvot, of the mishpatim, is that part of it, besides doing it, is that Hashem also wants me to use my intelligence, wants us to use our intelligence in understanding it, and get that kind of thinking in our minds that we understand this too. But when it comes down to the actual doing, we sort of have to, so to speak, erase our own thoughts and understanding and do it just because Hashem said. What's the difference? What's the difference if I don't steal because I don't think it's a good idea to steal, or if I don't steal because God told me to, because God told me not to? And the difference is simple. If I don't steal because I have come to a conclusion that I shouldn't steal, so it could be that tomorrow I'm going to meet somebody more intelligent than me, and that person can possibly convince me that, I was wrong, it's okay to steal. Like when I was a student in university, so I met this guy. He was a real cool guy, black belt in karate, Anyway, so he had moved into the student ghetto, and I went over one day to help him paint his apartment. And I see he's got all these brand new tools. And I know that he didn't have money. So I said, Sean, how'd you get this? He says, what's the problem? I said, well, you told me that you don't have money. These are expensive tools. So he says, so what's the problem? It's a hardware store down at the corner. So I said, so how do you get them? So he says, they go in with a jacket with long sleeves, and I take what I need. So I said, are you for real? Like, like, how could you do that? So he says, in all seriousness, he says, do you know that when storekeepers make their pricing, that they expect a certain amount of shoplifting, that they include it into the prices. So if I don't steal it, then he's really stealing from everybody else, because people are paying for something that hasn't been stolen yet. So he's doing the mitzvah that he's keeping the storekeeper from really stealing, so to speak. Okay. Understand understand when you want to rationalize, you can find ways to rationalize. Okay. So even if you've come to your own conclusion that that it's wrong to steal, somebody might convince you, hey, yeah, it's not so gefährlich, it's not so bad, and you might go ahead and do it. But if you're not stealing because Hashem said don't do it, right? So then you're going to, regardless, I think Judy said that, yeah. So regardless of what anybody else is going to tell you, you know that Hashem said don't steal, and you're not going to steal, right? So, and like, I don't want to repeat the story now because Friday Mordechai has already heard it probably 3 times in the last week. But basically, that was the big thing when you were a chassid in Kotsk. The big emphasis was, do you have it clear that what you're doing because Hashem told you, right? You're fasting on Yom Kippur. It should be not just because it says in Shulchan Aruch, not just because it says in the Torah, but because Hashem told you to fast, right? Whatever you're doing should be clear that you're serving Hashem. So that's as far as Mishpatim are concerned. Chukim is a little bit. He has a chumash. He usually brings his own. But you brought your own chumash, eh? Yeah, you always do. Okay. And chukim, it's when you don't understand it, so then it's obvious that you're doing it because Hashem told you, right? And what is this big chok that we're talking about in this portion? Is the chok of the red heifer, of the Parah Adumah, which we are looking for. As Rabbi Chaim Richman from the Temple Mount Institute, he's been traveling to farms in the States, like
But they found one.
They thought they found one, but you see, even if you find one, you have to wait until it's, until it's a certain age. You understand? And if it develops 2 black hairs, it's already not a Parah Adumah. And we're looking for the 10th one. And when we find it, that'll be clear that Mashiach is already here.
There's been 10 Parah Adumah?
Yeah, there's been 9 in history.
9 since the
first time, yeah, since the first one that Moshe Rabbeinu made.
Was there one in modern times?
Not yet. Huh?
They've been close.
They've been close, but it doesn't,
But there was always something that would come up with it.
If you missed the target, it doesn't matter by how much you miss it. You missed it.
Listen, isn't this splitting hairs at this point?
Ha ha ha.
Maybe that's where the phrase comes from.
Yeah.
Between rock and a hard place is also so maybe.
Okay, so Parah Adumah is the classic chok, because there are a number of features concerning this sacrifice which are so different from any other sacrifice. Number one is that the entire ceremony was done outside the temple. Every other korban everything was done within the Mishkan or within the Beit HaMikdash. Number two is mitaher et atmeim. It makes somebody who's tamei tahor, and it's mitamer et atmeim et tahorim, and it makes somebody who's tamei somebody who's tahor becomes tamei. Now, Barak probably remembers that I generally prefer not to translate the word tahov and tamei, because people usually end up with wrong ideas about it. And the reason for that is because I think that the concepts of Tumah and Tahara, I think are very exclusive to the Torah. So usually you'll find that Tameh is translated as impure or more precisely ritually impure, and Taho is usually translated as pure or ritually pure. But right away when you use those words, you're already thinking that there's something unclean about that which is Tameh, and that which is Tahov is pure, that's clean. And that's not what it's about. And simply speaking, first of all, here in this love of the Parah Adumah, you see that the one who was Tahor, the Kohen who does the ceremony, right? He becomes Tameh. He's doing a mitzvah, and while he's doing the mitzvah, he becomes Tameh, right? He's purifying somebody else, and he becomes Tameh, right? And to give you another example, the highest form of kindness is what's known as Chesed Shel Emet, true Chesed. What is Chesed Shel Emet? If I give you a glass of water, is that Chesed Shel Emet? No, because it might be that I'm doing you a favor, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that one day you'll do me a favor, right? Or you let me drive your Rolls Royce because I gave you a glass of water, Why not?
Yeah, you're a very giving person.
Huh?
A very giving person.
Right, the glass of water may be worth more than the ride in the Rolls Royce, it's possible. But it doesn't matter, but you understand, usually we're not very altruistic, and we usually think in terms of trading, like tit for tat or whatever it is, right? But if you go to a funeral, if you attend to the needs of the deceased, so then that's called Chesed Shel Emet, that's called true kindness, because you don't expect this person to get up and do you a favor. There's an old Jewish joke, an old Yiddish joke about, I don't know if you guys remember, but mind you, in New York you still have it. Bless you, the newspaper vendors on the corners, right? So they used to have that in Montreal also. These guys would be out there in these booths selling newspapers in freezing winter. I couldn't believe it, Anyway, so this newspaper vendor who sells Yiddish papers, he comes to the cemetery every day, and he goes over to a certain grave and he puts down the Yiddish paper. Anyway, the shomer of the cemetery notices that this guy is coming every day and delivering a newspaper at a certain grave. So finally, one day he says to him, he says, Rabbi, what are you doing? So he says, this man was a customer of mine. So he says, yeah, but he's dead, he's not paying. So he says, and you think when he was alive he paid? A customer is a customer. Anyway,
he's going to get a lot more customers.
Anyway, the point is that when you're doing a kindness for a deceased person, that's called Chesed Shel Emet. Yeah.
But you could think you're getting a reward from Hashem.
You could think that way, but so maybe you're not doing it completely L'Shem Shemayim, but as far as within the context of these two people, it's Chesed Shel Emet, right?
Any chesed, the ultimate purpose is to serve Hashem through the chesed, through the good deed.
Yeah.
So,
True.
So that is if you think you're getting reward from Hashem, it's
still a good deed. Yeah.
It doesn't diminish the deed, does it?
Not that the deed is still a good deed. How close you're doing this mitzvah, how close this is bringing you to God, is dependent on your attitude.
Actually, I learned it's actually a proof. It's like when you do a good deed for other people, it's because you want to do it for the other person. Because think about, let's say you do constant work, and the other person's for Hashem. It's like not really because you care about the other person. supposed to be because you didn't care.
Right, for sure,
You
yeah,
know, like
absolutely.
mitzvahs like lish be'adam makom. It's like okay to get close to Hashem, but be'adam chaver. It's like because you care.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both.
Doing something good for another person brings you close to that person.
Yeah.
Every time. Previously, you don't have the form feelings.
Exactly.
Okay. So here you're doing a great chesed. You're doing a great deed of kindness, and you become tamei from going and attending to the needs of the deceased person. You're going to the funeral. If you're within 4 amot, 4 cubits, you become tamei. If you're in the same building as a corpse, you become tamei. And the mitzvah of taking care of the needs of the dead is so great that even a Kohen Gadol, who was on his way to the temple to do the service of Yom Kippur, if he comes across a make mitzvah, a deceased body, the body of a deceased person, and there's nobody else around to attend to the burial, he has to take care of that, even though as a result he's not going to be able to do the service on Yom Kippur. Okay? So that's something that, and the tumah, the tumah of a mate, of being in touch with, being in contact with a dead person, that is the most intense tumah that there is. That's known as a Vi Avot HaTumah, the father of all fathers of Tumah. Okay? Now,
what is the Kohen becoming pure?
and he's asking why. We just spent 75 years explaining that we don't understand it.
No, but when they do sacrifices,
they don't become Tamei. Right. So this is just this.
Okay.
Right? In other words, all the laws of Tumah and Tahara are basically, we can understand the system, but what's it about? Now, so the Ishbasur, so the Ishbasur actually, we hear when we learned about the Parshat Emor, where the Torah says that Kohanim are not to become Tamei. You may have been here at that time, and I mentioned the Ishbasur, that the Ishbasur gives us some understanding of Tumah, vis-a-vis the Kohanim, where Hashem says to the Kohanim, they're not to go to funerals, right, or cemeteries, except for the immediate family, right? And over there, he explains that tumah, or getting involved with death, is bound to arouse anger towards God, because not everybody lives to 97 and live a happy life. You know, sometimes you encounter death in situations which are very, very harsh, and you don't understand like why and so on, and it could arouse anger towards Hashem. So Hashem is saying to the Kohanim, listen, your job is to help people be close to me. If you're going to be angry at me, you're not going to be able to do your job. So Hashem sort of tells the Kohanim, this is an area of life that you have to stay away from. Okay? So we understand a little bit. We understand that we get a little glimpse of something that makes some sense to us, but it doesn't explain why are you Tamei in the first place. You understand? So what Ishmael is basically saying is that, you know, that Tumah is related to that which blocks you from connecting with God. Okay? Now, we today in particular have a difficult time understanding that, because we don't know what it means to be Taho. None of us have experienced real Tahara, because we're all Tamei until we get the next Paraduma. That's the way it is. Okay, so if you have a certain sense of like, you know, yeah, this feels Tamei, this feels more Taho, this feels less Tamei. So you're getting some sense, but you don't really know what it's like to really be Taho. Okay?
Are we gonna have status of Tamei Torah once Mashiach comes after the red heifer? There's still gonna be
Will there be tumah? I don't know if there will still be tumah. That I don't know, but we will know what tahor is. Okay. And as far as tamei, we'll remember. Hopefully, Okay. So that was a good question. Now look in Rashi. I want you to see the Rashi, and I want to go into the Rashi in depth. Zot Chukat HaTorah, the first Rashi on the Parsha. If you need square letters, then the other in this red Chumash you got square letters. So if you, that's the Kedot also. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so before we read the Rashi, so the Rebbe says that we spoke before. I mentioned one idea about Zot Chukat HaTorah. This is the Chok of the Torah, right? In other words, this mitzvah exclusively is the Chok, right? So. And so that makes sense, right? He says, in addition to that, he says, Zot Chukat Torah. He's reading it as follows: this is the law which teaches us how to relate to everything else in the Torah. Understand that, like we were explaining, that even the mishpatim need to be done primarily because Hashem said so. Understand? So Zot, this mitzvah of the red heifer, is the chok which teaches you how to relate to everything else in the Torah. Understand? Okay? Right? The straightforward translation is Zot Chukat HaTorah. Chukat is in the construct state. You're a grammarian, aren't you? You're into grammar?
Yeah.
So you know what the construct state is. Chukat HaTorah, the law, the chok of the Torah, right? So that's the straightforward meaning of those three words. This is the law of the Torah. So what he's reading over here is, this is the law that tells you how to relate to the entire Torah. Okay? So look at Rashi. Zot Chukat Torah, says Rashi, Lefi Shehasatan V'umot Ha'olam Monin et Yisrael, because the Satan and the nations. Do you have enough light there?
Give it a bit more, isn't
So
it?
then why don't you come here?
Or you can just turn your head off.
No, you can come here. Sit
I
down.
think it moved.
Sit down over here. Whoever comes in last has to sit next to the teacher.
Yeah.
So you better have somebody else comes.
Even if they're other seats, you still make them sit next to you.
Okay. Yeah, you're with us, Rashi, the first Rashi. Okay? So, Zot Chukat Torah, so says Rashi, Lefi Satan V'umot Ha'olam, because the Satan and the nations of the world, Monin et Yisrael, they bother the Jews, Lomar, saying to them, Ma ha-mitzvah hazot, what kind of a mitzvah is this? V'ma ta'am yesh ba, what reason is there here? It doesn't make any sense.
It's funny that they don't ask us those questions anymore.
Yeah.
They ask us other questions.
They
essentially ask that. Really, when it boils down to that.
What is this claim you have to
Why
apply?
it's all, like, why even Israel? Why are you telling us?
Right.
What is this?
Right.
What is this claim you have to
Yeah.
apply?
Right.
What is this claim?
So, Lefichach, therefore, Katav b'chuka. So therefore, the Torah says chuka, that it's a chok. Zerahi milfanai. It's a decree, coming from me. And not only that, ein lecha reshut lahacher achareha. You have no permission to question it, to think about, not so much to question it, but even like you have to sort of like ponder it and try to figure out, why in the world did God tell us to do this, and it doesn't make any sense. So now the Rebbe raises a very interesting question. There are other places in the Torah. There are there's a couple of other places where Rashi says a very, very similar thing to what he wrote over here. Okay? Concerning Chukim. And now keep this in mind. But there's some differences. Over there, in those other places, Rashi says, instead of the Satan, Rashi refers to the Yetzer Hara. Okay? Because the Yetzer Hara comes over there, Rashi says that the Yetzer Hara comes and tells you, just hand me a Vayikra, please, with Rashi. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Like for example, in Parshat Chukkas, okay. So there's a verse over here that says like this: "Et mishpatai ta'asu." You shall keep my mishpat. You shall fulfill my mishpatim. V'et chukotai tishmeru, and you shall guard my chukim. L'lechet behem, to walk in their way. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I'm Hashem your God. Says Rashi, V'et chukotai tishmeru, you should guard my chukim. Says Rashi, Dvarim shehein b'zeirat hamelech. What are chukim? These are the decrees of the king. Sheyetzer hara meshiv aleihem, and the Yetzer hara responds to them by saying, Lama lanu l'shamran. What do you need to keep it for? Why do you need to keep these laws? V'umot ha'olam meshivin aleihem. The nations of the world also challenge us. Kigon achilat chazir, for example, not to eat pork. V'vishat shatnez, not to wear shatnez, wool and linen garments that are mixed together. V'taharat mechatat, or now he also mentions the parah aduma. So the kach ne'emar ani Hashem. So that's why the verse ends up saying ani Hashem Elokeichem. Gazachti aleichem. I have decreed this upon you. I ata rashai lipater. You are not free from doing this mitzvah. From doing this mitzvah.
Nothing.
Right. You're not released. You're not exonerated. Right. You're not exonerated. You're not liberated from doing it. Okay. So notice.
Exempt.
Exempt. That's the better word. Right. That's the word I wanted. And youth was an EX. Okay. So look. So listen carefully, and because there's a very important comparison here. Okay. So what did Rashi say over here in the text in front of you? Who's bothering us?
Nation.
The Satan, right? He mentions the nations also, right? He mentions the Satan and the nations, right? They come and they bother us, right? Over here in Vayikra, Rashi says, who's bothering us? The Yetzer Hara, right? And the nations. Okay? So that's one important thing to notice. Why is Rashi, you should know, Rashi is considered to be the ultimate commentator on the Torah. There are over 200 commentaries in print on Rashi.
Yeah.
Understand? In other words, there's no other commentator on the Torah that has had so many commentaries on what he wrote. Okay? His contemporaries said, some of them said that they were able to match his commentary on the Talmud, but they all agreed that nobody could match him on the Chumash. Okay? That's his contemporaries, the Ramban and others. Even those who argued with him in various places and said they don't agree with what he said, they said his commentary is amazing. So, if you see one verse where Rashi says that it's the Yetzer Hara that's bothering us, and in another place in our Parsha it says that it's the Satan that's bothering us, it's these two terms, even though in the context of a statement in the Talmud, these two terms are somewhat synonymous. Like it says in the Talmud, Hu ha-Satan, Hu ha-Yetzer Hara, Hu malach hamavet. That the Talmud, there is a statement of the Talmud saying that the angel of death and the Satan and the Yetzer Hara, they're all one. In other words, that they're synonymous, right? But even so, they're synonymous to a certain extent. But there is a difference between the Yetzer Hara and the Satan. Now, you can tell me the difference yourself. What does the word Satan literally mean? Lahastin. What does lahastin mean?
The stain.
What?
Does the word stain in English come from last
no.
I was thinking stain.
That's a good one. I like that.
I like this, I know.
I like that.
I've got an even more relevant one. You'll like even more, I think. Of
And this word.
Yeah, Palestine.
That's good.
It's with a stomach, isn't it?
Put on
Probably
the-
steam.
What's the difference?
What's the stain?
Lahastin is to block.
To block.
To block. Okay?
So it's used in
So, Satan, yeah. So, Sitna is also hate, by the way. But for example, when Bilam is coming to is heading towards cursing the Jews, right? So in Parshat Balak, right, which is next week's parsha. So you remember that Bilam is riding on his donkey, and Hashem is rushing, and Hashem sends an angel to block the way, right?
Mm-hmm. With the sword.
With the sword and so on, and finally the donkey tries to get away and squeezes his leg against the fence and so on, right? And then the third time the donkey finally just sits down, and Bilam gets all angry and he started hitting the donkey, and then this miracle happens. The donkey starts talking to Bilam, right? And
rebuking Bilam.
And here's the verse. V'yichar Raf Elokim ki holechu v'yitzetzev malach Hashem b'derech v'satan lo. Right? So the Satan is to block. Okay?
Kala is like wonder. Kala is wonder.
Yeah.
Palestine.
Okay.
Um,
Anyway,
there
let's
was
go
a
back.
language there was in Balak.
Balak, yeah.
Balak,
Okay. So Satan is to block. And what's Yetzer Hara? What does the word Yetzer mean?
Creation.
Inclination.
Inclination. So Yetzer Hara is sort of like that voice.
Hara is evil. Yeah.
That voice which suggests that you do something negative. Okay? Whether it suggests don't bother doing a mitzvah or suggesting something negative. Okay, so here's one difference already, right? In this verse in Vayikra, Rashi says it's the Yetzer Hara that comes to bother you, right? And notice this phrase again, that the fish Yetzer Hara meshiv aleihem. Doesn't say that the Yetzer Hara is bothering you. It says meshiv aleihem. The Yetzer Hara is coming with an argument against these mitzvot, right? He's coming and he's saying, what's going on? Okay. So that's another difference, right? And furthermore, here at the end of this Rashi that we read today in the Parsha, what does Rashi say? This is a decree of mine, and you may not. How did they translate the Ha'er? Where's the Rashi's translation that you got? What translation do you have for the Ha'er?
It's a question.
To question.
It's like wonder about it.
Over here they say you do not have the right to reflect upon it. He who Hihu is sort of like thoughts that arise. It's a bar mitzvah. It's okay, it's good. The night is young. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You can have it if you want it. You want it? You can have it.
Just
He wanted
kidding.
the joke.
Huh?
Very lazy.
He wanted the joke.
Where he can have the copy because it was a good joke. Okay. Hihu is thoughts that arise, it's not focused intentional thinking, but it's thoughts that arise, for example, usually, we say to God, prevent me from having hihurim ra'im, bad thoughts, and so on, right? So, like, for example, you see somebody that, back in 1926, you got yourself a brand new pair of shoes, and you see this guy who came and stepped on your toe back then, and these thoughts come up. Like, it wasn't like your homework assignment to think about this person who stepped on your shoe, right? But you see the person and the thought comes up, right? So that's hihurim, okay? It's like the whole advertising business works on hihurim, they try to get you to think certain things involuntarily.
We call that mind share.
Mind share.
It's just like, it's kind of
Mind-
involuntary,
mind.
like,
We'll take a part of your mind and we'll tell you what to
books, you
think.
think Amazon. Like, you
Right.
think, auctions, you think eBay. That's mind share.
It's like association. Was it?
No, that's that.
Association.
Yeah, but I'm talking about right. So it's like like you see the color red. You think about the fact you got to go home and wash the dishes.
it's not like automated responses you don't have
Yeah,
control
exactly.
over, and like a lack of control.
I must be
over
getting
yourself.
holy.
Red alert. Did you wash the dishes?
When I think I must be really getting higher with it, it's more holy, because when I think here the letter red, word red, I think Edom.
Adam.
Yeah.
Good. Adam.
Or
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Okay. So that's hihurim. Thoughts that arise. It's not that they're an argument against anything that you're doing, but they're just sort of like thoughts that arise. And okay. So that's another difference. Okay. So we got three differences now, right? One is Yetzer Hara compared to Satan, right? Two, that the Yetzer Hara is making an argument, right? Whereas the Satan is just blocking you. And three, over there in where Rashi is talking about the Yetzer Hara, God says you're not exempt. And over here, Rashi says you're not even allowed to think that way.
This finish, they say the Satan definitely
Bless you.
causes. It's not just blocking; it causes grief as opposed to.
Yeah, that's another. I'm gonna get to that point, okay? But first, I'm gonna go with this particular sikha. That's another sikha. So the Rebbe explains something beautiful, and when you start seeing this, like I really hope you get it, because it'll give you a whole new level of appreciation for Rashi. So the Rebbe points out that the fact that the Torah says Zot Chukat HaTorah, this is the chok of the Torah, right? That itself suggests that there really, you can, even among chokim, you can make a distinction. In other words, there's two categories of chokim. In what sense? So, there are chukim, like before we were talking about Tuma and Tahara, right? And I shared with you what the Ishbisser said about his understanding why Hashem doesn't want a Kohen to become Tameh, right? So you still don't understand what Tameh is really about, but you do understand that if this has something to do with people getting angry at God, you can understand that, in certain jobs, like for example, the Ishbisser gives the example that the king tells his chef, you are preparing my food I want you to make sure that whenever you're cooking for me, that you're in a good mood, because the mood affects the cooking, right? You can understand, like and analogously, that Hashem is saying to the Kohanim, listen, you have a certain job. Death is a part of life, but it's a part of life that could get you angry at God, and you need to be away from being angry at God, because otherwise you won't be able to serve as a Kohen. You understand that? It makes some sense, right? It makes some logic, right? Understand? So the overall concept of Tuman Tahara, you could make some sense of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are parts of this law that don't make sense, and there are parts of it that do make some sense, right? But then there's Zot Chukat Torah, this particular mitzvah, Parah Duma. This is the ultimate chok, because nothing over here makes rational sense. The fact that you're slaughtering it outside the Beit HaMikdash. If this is a sacrifice, why is it being slaughtered outside the Beit HaMikdash? The fact that it makes the one who's tahor becomes tamei, the one who's tamei becomes tahor. Whoop! What happened there? Okay. And the fact that how is the purification taking place? The purification is taking place by taking the ashes of this parah adumah and mixing it with water and a couple of other things, and you're sprinkling it onto the person that's tamei. Mazel tov, you're sprinkling water and ashes on somebody, and that's it. It becomes tahor, right? Does that make any sense? Doesn't make any sense, right? And
Well,
no, you go ahead. You want to try? Try.
No, I'm not. What exactly is done?
I'm just
doesn't
giving you a hard
necessarily
time
make us
because I'm going to miss you terribly.
I'll miss you too. I'll miss this too. It feels like a separation.
No, chas v'shalom. He's going to Tzfat for a month.
States, but it seems to make some sense. It's done when someone comes in contact with a corpse, right?
So what
so
makes
there
sense?
seems to be some rationale to do something to, if there's an understanding that makes someone impure. So what do you do to make to?
You understand that if you become impure, that you got to do something to become pure, right? I mean, okay. Yeah, but
what?
that the Kohen should become tamei, and the one who's tahor becomes tahor. It just doesn't. It doesn't add up to our reason. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
It sounds to me like something Korach would ask. Comes the brush after Korach.
No, Korach's question was actually logical. Yeah, that will connect it with
A
Korach.
house full of Torah is Yulim Mezuzah.
Yeah, it's a very logical question.
So is this, why wouldn't the person who's making
Why
wouldn't he become more pure?
So it works. That's right, and or at least remain pure.
Sure.
Right, but that's not
Double pure.
So, but
Triple distilled.
he lived in Edinburgh for a year. He did actually.
Where's that one?
Scotland.
Looking for
Oh,
on the search.
It used to be known as Scotland, and then they thought it was a little bit too revealing, so they called it Scotland.
There's whiskey man. They don't call it Scotch, you know.
What do they call it?
Whiskey. They get very upset if you call it Scotch.
Oh, okay. They're still trying to keep a secret. Okay. So, what's the so the Rebbe says like this. So when it comes to mitzvot, when it comes to chukim, that you can partially understand and partially not understand. So then, guess who's going to make trouble? No, the Yetzer Hara. And the Yetzer Hara is not just going to block you, he's going to argue with you. Right? Remember we said that the Yetzer Hara is presenting an argument, right?
It's like when you're engaging with something on a level like arting that just maybe you can understand, that you can that
Right.
you have
Now, there's some of it makes sense, right?
Yeah, and
Some of
so-
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the Yetzer comes and says, "Hey, come on!
Right. There's a way in.
This is really, he has a way in. You understand? Because you're already very good, very good. You understand? Because you're already somewhat engaged with this intellectually." So the Yetzer says, "Oh, you're a smart guy. Let me tell you what I learned." Right? Okay? So he can already engage you intellectually. And then you're gonna have, and his argument is gonna make sense. Okay? So Hashem says, you're not exempt. Okay? Understand? Even though part of the mitzvah makes sense, and part of the mitzvah doesn't make any sense to you, right? Don't get trapped into thinking I'll do that which makes sense and I'll ignore that which doesn't make sense. You're not exempt from any of it. Okay? But when it comes to the chok, which there's none of it makes any sense, right? So who springs into action? The Satan. Okay? Then the Satan springs into action. Because the Satan works differently. The Satan doesn't come to you with a logical argument. Satan has other ways to block you from doing it. So the argument that Rashi brings over here of the Satan is, he says, there's no reason to this. You're a human being. You are the highest of the creations. You have a brain. You have intelligence. How could you do something that you don't have any explanation for whatsoever? It's an insult to your humanity.
What if you exclude me?
Okay. And what if I don't?
Okay.
I'll ask you,
I'll ask you.
There's so many things that we don't
Thank you, Ben.
understand.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
What?
There's so many things we don't understand. At least I don't understand that I might have a basic understanding, if that, and still I do not.
Because so you're a tzaddik.
I'm certainly not a tzaddik.
Okay, but nobody gave you permission to say that either. So you're already past that hump. But for example, the Rambam wrote a book called Moreh Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed, right? And he tries to rationalize all the mitzvot.
In a time when philosophy was like the.
But what was the philosophy? The philosophy was that that don't insult your intelligence as a human being doing something that you don't understand. And that was like, so today that's not such a, that philosophy is not so demanding as it was back then. But that was like, that's why he wrote Moreh Nevuchim, because the Jewish people were just going for that Aristotelian philosophy, whoever that guy was. I heard about him once. Okay? And they were like, yeah, he's right. You have a brain. How could you go against something how could you do something that's not intelligent? Okay? So he tried to rationalize the mitzvot and tried to give you some kind of rational explanation behind shatnas, behind all these different chukim, behind all these different
Do
chukim.
you remember any of his rational explanations?
Yeah, but I don't want to go into that right now. But
Just as an example.
well, for example, the thing about shatnas, like one is the wool is from an animal, the linen is from things that grow from the earth, and there was for shatnas he says that apparently there was this religious cult that they wore specifically those kinds of garments, and that it was a way to keep you separate from that cult. Okay, maybe not. You understand? But he did things like that. And the fact is that the Rambam's book did not really succeed. It did not really get widely accepted among the Jewish people. But there's a lot of beautiful things in that book, and it's still studied today in universities and so on. But I'm not going there right now. Let's go back to the Satan, okay? So what's the argument of the Satan? The argument of Satan is, come on, you're an intelligent person. You really believe this ancient stuff? You know, like you really, you really to do this? Like, your grandfather lived in the 13th century. You're now living in the 21st century, right? What are you doing with this stuff? Okay.
What's the difference between Yitzhak and Satan?
So the Satan is not giving you a rational argument against the mitzvah itself. He's just saying it's totally irrational that you should do this.
So maybe convince you that you have no reason to do it. You know, it's like not really like an argument against the thing itself, just like this why.
You're a human being, like,
There's no
come on,
reason to do it.
you shouldn't do this, right? What are you, superstitious? What,
It's a fairly subtle distinction, I think.
It's a subtle
It's not
distinction. Now the Yetzer Hara is coming, and the Yetzer Hara is he's telling you, don't do this. Okay? He's telling you, don't do it. The Satan is saying, come on, how could you do that? Okay? This is more subtle, and the Yetzer Hara is telling you to do something bad also. He's telling you whatever, that we can go into different mitzvot.
Same goal, different means.
Same goal, different means. But what the Rebbe is saying is the fact that Rashi is using the word Yetzer Hara concerning Chokim, and by the Chok of Para Aduma, he's using the word Satan, right? There's a distinction. Because by the Chukim, most Chukim, you get some understanding of the general principle. So therefore, you're already, in other words, intellectually, some of it is making sense to you. And the Yetzer Hara is coming and saying, okay, that which makes sense is good, but that which doesn't, don't bother with it. Okay? And since you're already intellectually engaged in it. But with the Chok, he's not going to tell you, none of it makes any sense, right? So the argument of the Satan is, come on, you're a human being, it doesn't make sense that you should do something that you don't understand.
Tell me, this is kind of what I'm hearing, tell me if this is kind of what you're saying. I feel like the Yetzer Hara is saying, yes, you have a reason, you have some ideas for why you're doing this. I'm going to say something that's going to convince you more. Like, my reason is better. Like, why not to do it, right? And you're convinced. And then the Satan is like, you don't have a reason. Like, you have nothing. Convincing you that you don't have a reason to do it at all. I don't know if this is
and therefore, the only argument he can give you is, not a reasonable argument. He can only argue and say, how could you, as a human being with intelligence, possibly do something that you don't understand? Okay.
For the other Chukim, we're not told not to question it.
And so for the other Chukim, it says you're not exempt. You're allowed to think about it, but you're not exempt. And for the Parshat Chukkas, it says you're not even allowed to ponder it and try to figure it out. Okay. So now the thing is like this. So what is the Satan now? Now the Satan is not stupid, right? Satan is not stupid, and he realizes that if you tell a Jew, how could you do this? It doesn't make any sense. Any half-intelligent Jew is going to say, listen, we believe in God, who's totally beyond our understanding in the first place. So if God is telling me to do something, I'm going to do it, and the fact that I don't understand it, you know what, it doesn't really bother me that much. You understand?
Well, that's what I was thinking. It's like we're supposed to have faith and know that Hashem exists, but at the same time we can't understand it. So it seems to me it's analogous to this.
Yes,
Just
it is analogous, that's right.
You don't understand this mitzvah, but I want you to do it just like I want you to believe it, have faith.
And connect with me beyond...
I'm not understanding.
Connect with me beyond your intelligence, right?
Right.
Now-
That's the key. Go beyond it.
So
Something that
so
go beyond
so so
our
if
head.
that's the case, so what's the danger in actually pondering this mitzvah? The Satan knows that you're going to tell him, listen, mister, you're very smart, but you're not.
Because if you ponder
Ultimate
this, then you're going to ponder other things. You're going to question
Yeah,
everything.
but that's, so what? But remember they say, but why does Rashi specifically stay over here? Like, don't, Lola Ha'el, right? So what is this? What is the Satan thinking? What is the Satan trying to get? The Satan knows that you're going to tell him, okay, good. So you're asking me how come I'm doing something that I don't understand? I don't understand God either, but God is God. Okay? So what the Satan is trying to do is, who used the word grief before? Yeah.
Here.
Okay.
Well, in the film.
Yeah. So what the Satan is trying to do is he's trying to rob us of the joy in doing the mitzvah. You understand? If you get involved with the Satan's argument, so even though you're going to end up doing it because you're going to say, yes, it does, it's true. I'm an intelligent being, and I should understand what I'm doing. But God is beyond my intelligence. So God told me to do this, and even though it doesn't make sense, I'll do it anyway. You've been robbed of doing the mitzvah with joy. And therefore, don't even entertain the arguments or the ideas of the Satan. To give you an example, right? When you were a little kid, or if you remember when your children were small, were young, would you like, and mommy says or daddy says, would you like to help me carry this? Yeah. You want to do a mitzvah? Yeah. Right? Right? And the kids are happy to do it. Why are they happy to do it? Why? Because they like carrying a bag. Because they understand what a mitzvah is. They understand that Tati or Mommy asks them to do something, and they love Tati and Mommy, and they want to do it. Okay? But when they get older, right, and more worldly, right, and they've learned that this has to make sense, and that has to make sense, and that has to make sense, right, and which is the way we educate them, right. So then it becomes more difficult. So you want to help me carry these bags from the shuk? Well, what am I going to get out of it? I'm your father. You have to do it. Okay, I'll do it. Right? The joy is gone. Right? So, if you listen to the Satan at all, you'll still do the mitzvah in the end. But you're not going to have the joy. Okay? That's what the Satan is trying to accomplish. Yetzer Hara is entering into an argument with you and is trying to get you not to do it. The Satan is not trying to get you not to do it because he knows that you're going to do it anyway, but he's blocking the connection with Hashem.
And there's a theory that over time you'd stop doing it because it's
maybe yes, maybe no. You might end up doing it for the rest of your life. But yes, but you're right. That's what the Arizal says. That's what the Arizal says. That all our going astray started with serving Hashem without joy. Because when you're not happy, when you're doing the mitzvot and you don't have the joy, so then you're a customer for the Yetzer Hara who comes and says, "Listen, come with me. I'll take you to a party. You'll have a good time. So it's like the downfall begins not by not doing mitzvahs, but by doing mitzvahs without joy. Okay. Now, you got a particular appreciation for Rashi?
Yeah, but no, I get that, but it also feels to me that it's, if you start questioning this, then it leads to questioning your faith in Hashem.
Yeah,
You
but
need to understand.
but the thing is like
That's
this.
like a bigger-
It's true, but on the other hand, it's hard to live in this world and not encounter people who don't question anything. Okay, and it's not unnatural to question. Okay, but you need to understand what's involved in the questioning and where's the question coming from, and who is presenting the question and what is their motivation. Okay.
And we're allowed to question.
You're allowed to question, yeah. In Judaism, you're allowed to question. But again, you need to know what is your motivation. Is your motivation because you want to go deeper, you want to understand better? Or is your motivation to find an excuse for not doing it? Right? So that's a big difference. Okay? So now you're going to start learning Rashi seriously,
Well,
right?
that's the thing. I was reading this, but I didn't get that understanding from reading the explanation.
No, that was a different sikha.
No, well, it's sort of getting it.
Yeah,
sort
it's
of
related.
gets that,
It's
but
related,
it
right?
Wasn't clear.
This is the 201st commentary on Rashi.
Yeah. No, as a matter of fact, the scholar once told me that the depth of the way the Lubavitch Rebbe was learning Rashi is unequaled in any of the other commentators that have been written on Rashi. He revealed things about Rashi's precision and understanding of the text that you won't find in any of the other commentators. Like, for example, I'd be surprised if you could find me a commentary on Rashi that pays attention to this distinction that we learned tonight. This is like a chiddush.
So the one that's about Paul, this is about the Satan, the one that.
This one here is
Which
Satan.
one was about the Yitzhak?
About the mishpatim in general, about the chokim in general.
About what pasuk was that?
It was Vayikra,
Oh.
Perek Yudchet, pasuk. It was Perek Yudchet, pasuk Daled. Vayikra Yudchet Daled.
Okay.
Okay. So now this was like a big chiddush, this Rashi. I mean, this way of learning the Rashi. Okay. What else can I share in 2 minutes? Zev, remember Zev, the drummer? He wrote a song back in Montreal still. It's called, he wrote a song about the Parah Aduma. Maybe you can find it. I wonder if you put it up on YouTube. It's a beautiful song. Send him an email. You have his email? I don't have it, but you send him or text or whatever. And it's a very beautiful song, like a folk song. I mean, he's playing guitar as he's singing it.
I assume it's not a 2-minute explanation of why Moshe hitting the rock ends up being such a severe, appears to be such a severe.
There are a few opinions,
Right.
and one of them is that of the Rambam, that the people maybe didn't ask in the nicest way and so on, but still they needed water, and Hashem said to give them water, and it was an opportunity, like Rashi says, to teach a lesson that a rock that doesn't require sustenance like human beings do, when spoken to and told what God wants, that we do what Hashem wants. So we who need sustenance from Hashem at all times, breathing, water, food, etc., so then for sure we should be doing God's will. And the Rambam takes another angle and he says that it was because of the anger, because of the hitting. In other words, one of the big things in the Torah, one of the big distinctions between belief in Hashem versus the whole system of idolatry. The whole system of idolatry those who believed in the idols basically believed that their gods, that the gods they believed in, hated man. For example, those who worship Saturn on Saturday, right? How did they worship Saturn? They would take somebody in their congregation, and they would whip him and lash him until the guy was bleeding, because they believed that Saturn was an angry god. And when they would take somebody and beat the hell out of him, and the guy was already finally bleeding, that Saturn would then be satisfied and leave the rest of them alone.
Wow.
Okay? Or, for example, it says in the Torah, which is totally the opposite of what we believe about Hashem, right? And, or for example, it says in the Torah that if when somebody dies, you're not allowed to gouge yourself, you're not allowed to rip your hair out and so on, which was a common practice among other religions. Again, because they believed that when somebody died, that their God was angry at them, and who knows how many more people he might kill. So they would do these things to hurt themselves physically to appease their God. Okay, so it was, and being that in those days, those systems, those religious systems were widely known. So when Moshe Rabbeinu hit the rock and forced the rock to give water, it was so contradictory to what the Torah was trying to teach us about Hashem. Huh? You timed it?
No, but it's approximately.
2-minute Torah.
There are other reasons also, other explanations rather, but okay, so thank you for being here, and Mr. Shem, see you Shabbos. We're having Shem Yeshudis, Mr. Shem. This Shabbos afternoon is so long now, you can take a 3-hour nap and still come in time.
We have a Suda Ravit.
Huh?
Yeah, Suda
Yeah.
Ravit.
You know, my neighbors were in Scotland last week. You know, with it, yeah. She said that
What are we doing there?
they went. They're retired and they're touring.
These neighbors.
Yeah, right over here. Yeah, and so she said Shabbos ended at 12 o'clock at night.
Oh my God.
You know, the religious guy and girl, when they want to go out for a date on the weekend, they go out on Friday night. It's when they go like to an 8 o'clock movie or whatever it is, and go home, take a shower, and then they come to shul
Really?
for Kabbalah Shabbat. Yeah.
The winter started.
Shabbos begins, huh?
The winter started.
Well, you know, winter, but this time of year, Shabbos begins like at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
So you finish Mars and everything, and then you just stay for a snack and everything, and you start Shacharit.
Making Kiddush, and
Yeah.
Does candlelighting start getting earlier?
it should be soon, because we're past.
After
What's the longest day of the year?
22nd.
The only thing is that the day's getting longer, but it's getting longer not at the not getting longer at the end of the day, but it's getting longer because the sun is rising earlier.
Let's say that the Satan taking away the joy from during the mitzvah remind me of I think pretty well known. I think it's about Rebbe's story. Right, he was walking with some of his Talmudim and everything into the Knesset, and he was saying that he can't go in there. I don't know if you know this one. There's somebody.
Baal Shem Tov.
Baal Shem
He said
Tov,
that
okay.
he said the shul was
Too
crowded.
full.
It was
too
crowded.
full, but it was too full. It was too full of prayer. Like it couldn't get through.
The prayers never left the building.
Right. It reminds me of that. When you take away the joy, you're not really serving
Why
Shabbos
did
and
the
Chag.
guy leave the building?
He says whoever prayed in that shul, they were praying in such a way that their prayers never left the building.
Sometimes
They didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
They weren't directed towards God or something.
Whatever.
Whatever else it wasn't really directed towards God. Yeah, this reminds me of the idea that
That's the concept of Satan.
Yeah, but it's
But
just
the
you're
Satan-
doing it.
Like
but
you know,
it's
like for example, during davening, you're davening and you're thinking about something else, right?
Yeah.
So that's the work of the Satan. That's blockage.
Yeah.
it's something that
Also
Satan,
the same letters.
right?
That-
No, but phonetically very similar.